Hi everyone, welcome to News Now Nation. We are joined by Mr. Rakesh Monanuri, who is the founder of Whistle Drive. It is an employee transportation startup which provides technology-enabled fleet services for corporates and operates across the major cities. We welcome you, sir.
Hi Ria, nice to meet you here.
So we wanted to know a little bit about Whistle Drive before we get started. What has been your take on it and how did the company come in progress?
Right. So just small correction, Ria. So we're not just an employee transportation company anymore. We are also into logistics now.
All
So
right,
I'll
all
just
right.
I'll just run you through the growth story of how Whistle Life has begun and where we have come
Sure.
now and where we're going to evolve to. So we started off as a driver on demand app, which basically means that if you have a car and you need a driver for your car, you could order a driver on Whistle Drive app and we would provide you a driver, right? That was the
All right.
initial idea. So, but 1 year into it, we realized that, the idea, quite small and we wanted to explore what else can be done with it. It just so happened that we piloted our software that we have built for driver on demand problem for the employee transportation needs of this corporate company, and
Right.
they loved the efficiency that we could provide, and they loved the fact that they could track all the employees in the cabs. This whole beautiful understanding of how what happens on the ground operations kind of helped them. So that's when I realized
Right.
that the software has potential, and we pivoted to employee transportation for corporates. This happened in 2017. Right after that, I think 6 months into employer transportation, we quickly realized that this is not just a SaaS game, but we also have to get into the ground operations and solve the problems at fundamental
Okay.
level. So
Right.
this happened in 2018. And once we started scaling in 2018, we raised funds from an investment company. And post that, the scaling has been terrific for us. In 2019, we raised our, next round of funding, 10 million,
Great.
towards September 2019. And we were scaling like crazy. I mean, uh, by 2020 early, I mean, we were at a trajectory that I could not believe that we have come there, right? So we were adding clients back to back, large contracts came in place, and all great things started happening. But again, the pandemic happened. So it was like a big blow to our revenue because we were in the corporate transportation
Of
space and
course.
everyone started working from home, and I could see that this could take a lot of time for things to get back to normal.
Right.
So
Right.
we always had this plan of extending our employee transportation services to urban mobility as a whole. I always had this idea to extend this mobility platform to cater to the logistics part as well, but just wasn't sure when to do it or how to do it. So pandemic kind of gave us an opportunity to explore that area, and the team has been really supportive. They adapted to the situations really well, and we stepped into logistics, and fortunately now we have exceeded our pre-COVID revenues, and at this point we are
That's
scaling.
amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy actually that we're scaling much faster than what we would have if not for the pandemic. In a way, pandemic just increased the whole total addressable market for Whistle Drive, and the whole idea of how large Whistle Drive can get. So in a way, pandemic helped us. That's kind of
Yeah,
uh,
so
you
you're
know
in that category where pandemic has been useful to you. You could start your next set of ideas in place, and of course, in terms of revenue
exactly. I
as
mean,
well.
being a services driven, technology driven services company,
Right.
it's kind of weird that pandemic helped us, but it actually helped us.
And how big is your team?
So at this point, we are a group of 60 people, spread
That's
across,
a big number.
yeah, so spread across, 12 cities.
And where do you see Whistle Drive in the next few years now?
I think, see, interesting thing is, I have these discussions with my team and, my investor, and
Right.
we have come to realize that Diesel Drive is going to compete with the mobility companies, the likes of Ford and Mahindra. If
Okay.
you understand, Mahindra has its mobility wing and Ford has its Ford Smart Mobility wing,
Right.
right? So we cater to all the business use cases in the city transportation. So think of employees traveling to offices, and think of goods being transported in the city. Think of e-commerce deliveries being done. Everything is B2B movement, right? So
Right.
Whistle Drive has all the B2B movement under its umbrella. So I mean, there's a bunch of things we could be doing. I mean, right now at this point, the focus of the company is also is been on electric vehicles for last mile deliveries, right? So that's one
Right.
big opportunity, I think, where electric adoption will happen at a crazy pace, and we are actually pushing that. We are building an ecosystem of manufacturers, vendors, fleet owners, building the whole electric ecosystem to transition that fuel based fossil fuel based transportation to electric. And last mile transportation is where the use case is perfect because of the shorter distance that is there, right? So we're doing bunch of things. I think Whistle Drive will evolve into a urban mobility company in the next 5 years, where we would do everything that is there in B2B, when it comes to an urban city.
Yeah. And what is that one thing that really attracts customers to Whistle Drive? Like if there was one thing you wanted to sell about Whistle Drive.
Right. I think the most important thing is how we use technology to solve our customers'
Okay.
problems. The
Okay.
biggest thing is that there's a lot of players in the logistics space or the employee transport space, but unless you have the data of what happens at ground level, unless you have the understanding of what can really change in terms of efficiency or cost, you wouldn't be able to make a lot of decisions, right?
Right.
So for example, in logistics, there's bunch of players. I'm not denying that there's competition, right? So there is huge competition, but the advantage that we would have is that we have a set of tools that we use internally. One of the largest being the supply chain platform that we are building, wherein we have a network of fleet owners and vehicles spread across the cities, right? So that kind of gives us a very very advantage over local players who wouldn't be able to
Right.
match the demand and supply. So for example, a client comes to us and says, hey, I need 50 fleet for the next 1 week, right? We have the platform where we can talk to the drivers,
Okay.
alert the drivers through our app and get them onboarded for that particular client. So I think that's where the edge is. The customers love the fact that we are a technology driven company and we
Right.
understand the ground reality of problems.
So that is what kind of differentiates you from the competition itself.
Exactly. Yeah. We are a product driven, solutions company. So that's kind of what clients love about us.
And in terms of funding, right? So how easy or difficult was it for you to get funding for Whistle Drive?
So we've been with the single investors since the beginning. That's one of the
Okay.
reasons. One of the reasons why we had to do that is because I was in the long term game and I wanted to have as as much focus on the company as possible. So we didn't really look for external funding because the
Okay.
investor from the start has been very supportive, and they have been pumping funds as and when necessary. So we have been good with funds, and also the advantage that we have is we have been very very frugal, right? the
Okay.
average
Right.
the average age of an employee at Whistle Drive is around 26, right? Which is a
Oh,
very very young team.
very young. Yeah.
Yeah, we have been very very frugal in terms of cost. I mean, the startups that spend crores of rupees to get to the scale that Whistle Drive has gotten to, we spend very minimal money. So we have been very
Okay.
frugal. We've been very frugal, and that's one of the reasons why we did not have to go for larger checks than what we already raised. But I think funding was, what really matters, Ria, is if this is for any entrepreneur who's watching this video,
Right.
funding is very very subjective. There is no formula, there is no rule book, or there's no process or steps in which someone can raise funding, right? You have to be at the right place at the right time, talking to the right people, and they should also be interested in the space that you're in. So
Definitely.
several factors play a major role in the fundraise part.
So, and what has been your biggest motivation factor in terms of, having your own startup?
Right. So I've been interested in the startup space since my engineering days. So
Okay.
right. So I graduated in 2015. So 2016 is when I started Whistlewire. And the 1 year that I've spent from 15 to 16 has been focused on what is the problem that I should be solving and all that. So since 2012, 13, I've been interested in startups. There was this whole way of Olas and Flipkarts and all these
Right.
companies scaling heavily.
Suddenly they grew big. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was this whole noise about how startups are changing the country, the glamorization of Indian startups, the whole startup ecosystem building, Bangalore becoming the Silicon Valley, bunch of things started happening. As a kid, during my engineering, I found that more interesting and more captivating than an MNC
Yeah.
job or something else. So that's how I started.
Okay.
And I think I've always been a very entrepreneurial guy since the beginning. So I wanted to
Okay.
solve problems. So it just so happened that eventually I would have started any time. It just so happened that I started right out of college.
That's pretty great. People usually take time, to kind of experiment and then start up anything. But for you, like you started right after college, so that's pretty amazing. Like very inspiring for people like us and
I
for
think
everyone.
I think Riyazi, starting after college is the most sane thing to do because once you get into the loop of making money, right, and you have a lifestyle
Right.
to maintain, right, and also you
Right.
have responsibilities, it's kind of difficult for you to let go of all that and then start up. I had nothing to lose in 2015, 16,
Yeah, you were just out of college.
just out of college. And I was making money. I was doing freelance projects. I was doing tutoring. I was doing a bunch of
Okay.
things. I was making money, but the responsibility of having a job at a very large corporate or, the career sort of feeling was never there. So that's one of the reasons why it was very easy for me to just focus on it.
All right. And India's traffic, is supposed to be, the worst among the world. So how is your company helping in mitigating that?
I think pandemic helped already, so we're not trying to do anything about it. But I think what will happen, Ria, is more and more companies or enterprises would try and focus on how to make things efficient for the customers or the employees, right? So
Right.
when e-commerce volumes keep increasing, the necessity for a person to go out on the road and buy something would reduce. I'm
Decreasing.
not
Yeah.
I'm not saying it would directly impact the traffic, but it actually makes a difference, trust me. So when you have Big Baskets, Swiggy, Instamart, when you have Grofers and all these apps, deliveries groceries to you, the inclination for you to go to a supermarket and get stuff is kind of low,
Becomes
right?
low. Right.
Right. So I think e-commerce would help in a way, and also work from home has been a very, very significant factor in reducing
Boon
the
for
traffic,
everyone.
right?
Yes.
But I don't know why, but the traffic is getting back to normalcy even without work from office.
Yes.
It just means that work from home is not very effective in terms of how people are functioning. But I think what will happen is, shared mobility is going to increase. People are going to, share their travel, commute, and the commute overall is going to reduce. I'm not saying, see, I also run a employee transportation company, but work from home is going to be a significant part of
Yes.
people's lives. Earlier, what was
Especially for
not.
like startups and MNCs, definitely. Like it might continue for a year or more, maybe.
No, I mean saying a significant. It'll always be a hybrid model, Ria.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
I think employees would be given a choice. I think flexibility around that would be important because as humans we are habitual creatures. You can't just sit at home for 1.5 year and then suddenly go back to office wearing formals and stuff.
Definitely.
It's kind of difficult,
It's very
right?
difficult. Yeah.
Very difficult. So I think hybrid model would exist, and people would be given a choice. And some of the roles that can be done virtually would be done virtually. It's not necessary for them to, come back to office. But I think there's several factors that I think are necessary for employees to come back to office. One being the mental health, challenges that would come in if you're isolated for a very long period of time. Family time,
Definitely. It plays a
family
mind on you.
Exactly. Family time is important, but 100% of family time kind of gets to you, right? I don't know. A lot of married people say that. So I don't know if that's a reality. But But again, what also happens is you need that interaction of, this casual interaction of just running into people, having this tea breaks or coffee breaks, and, eating lunch together. So that's how the culture is built, right? If you do not have
Right.
access to
Right.
people in the company, then how are you going to build the culture for the company, right? For example, the core employees of WhistleDrive have been with us for the last 3-4 years. So they very much understand the culture of WhistleDrive, and they are in line with what I think or the company thinks, right? Now, if I have new employees on board and I don't spend enough time with them having chats or playing PT or doing whatever,
Getting to know them. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's kind of difficult. It's very weird that you would have a conversation about someone going on a date on Zoom, right? You wouldn't talk about it, but it happens
Right.
in casual conversation. So I think work from home will not continue 100%. It is going to be hybrid. I think the vaccination has also increased, so that is going to be one of the factors why
Right.
people are going to come back to offices. But again, I think it will be a choice. So corporates, we have been working with them, just showing a lot of interest in opening up offices. They're trying to
Okay.
gauge the employees' interest in coming back. But I think, I think we drifted off from the question, but the part about traffic is that we have to live with it, Ria, because we are a very hugely populated country. But I think
Right.
solutions around that would come, electric adoption would kind of reduce the pollution. Bunch of things will happen to, get solve the problem of traffic and pollution.
Okay. So, what is the one trick to reach your customers when you know you have a good product? Like when you built Whistle Drive, you knew that you had the vision in mind. You knew that it was a good product. So, how did you kind of bring customers to your platform?
I think the easiest thing is you just go and talk to them directly, try to get hold of them in whichever way possible. So I think a lot of people plan too much, think too much, strategize too much, but act less, right? Uh,
Okay.
so when we landed our first biggest customer in the corporate space, uh, we had almost zero big clients. I mean, zero large clients. So we had very
Okay.
small clients before we started, working with a very, very large corporate in Hyderabad. So
Right.
the only reason it happened because I think I probably was a little confident about pitching Whistle Drive, and we got to the right POC at the right time. So I think my advice, or my suggestion for anyone out there who's going to listen to this is, don't think too much, don't plan too much, don't strategize too much. Just go talk to the first 5 to 10 customers and try and solve their problem. We always try to sell what we have, but I think that doesn't help. You have to try and solve the particular person's problem. For example, let's say there is a HR or facility head. They would have a specific problem from the employee or from the transportation or from the vendor that they're dealing with. So you have to go and tap on that problem and say, hey, I'm going to solve that. I think that really helps.
Uh, it's basically solving a real life problem, and that kind
Yeah, I
of
mean
gives you the
that's what we do, right? I mean, see, we stepped into logistics. The only reason I think we're scaling is because somebody is doing a shitty job and we're doing better than them.
better than. Yeah, but I'm sure there are a lot of market players, but but of course everyone has their own USP.
See, India is a huge country area, so I mean, even if you have 100 large players, it still won't be enough, right? So the market share is
Right.
up for grab. It's not like you're eating into somebody else's. The new companies are coming up. I'm sure D2C brands are cropping up like
Right. Right.
crazy, right? So I think India is a large market, and it's fair to assume that everyone would have their own market share.
Okay. So, any tips for like budding entrepreneurs, or what's that thing that someone should keep in mind when they're starting out?
So anything specific that you would think about around that question?
No, I mean anything that you want to like give a message out to the budding entrepreneurs.
Right. I think there has been uh, never a better time to start up, right?
Okay.
And there has never been a better time in terms of resources available, in terms of funding available, in terms of opportunity available. So I think this is the best time for anyone to start up. Having said that, starting up is a very, very, very long term game. So if you are in the game for the long run and you're not worried about making quick money, or you're not worried about building quick, profile for yourself, I think you would do a better job. Because what happens with a lot of people is they get, attracted to the glamour of startup industry and, startup ecosystem, and they hear news about funding. They hear someone raising 50 million, 100 million, all this
Right.
startup influencers who become very, very popular, right? So they get attracted to that whole idea of how amazing it is, but forget the fact that, that's all just part of the very minute part of the whole thing. Solving a problem, building revenue, building customers, raising money for your company, scaling the company, playing a long-term game is kind of important. So
Right.
I would say this is a great time to start up, but don't start up unless you are in this for the long run, because you wouldn't see any results for the first 2 years. So you'd be disappointed. And unless you can deal with that, don't start up. And another quick suggestion for anyone who's going to start up is,
Right.
what you would think is very different from what happens in reality. So
Okay.
the closer you are to reality, the better. Because we read a lot of books, we read a lot, we listen to a lot of podcasts. We consume a lot of information and we assume that this is how it is. But again, the reality is very, very different. So I would say stick to the reality and focus on the problem on the ground and then try to solve it.
Okay, very, very nice to know that. And just kind of coming to the end now, we
Hmm.
wanted to know a little bit about you, like,
Yeah.
uh, your hobbies maybe outside office, and what keeps you going.
Uh, I think I spend a lot of time with my friends. So I have a bunch
Okay.
of friends who I hang out with. So
All right.
they're the people that I spend time with. And also I do read a lot of books and watch a lot of movies. And I'm a huge movie buff. So I end up
Okay.
watching at least one
Bollywood
movie.
or Hollywood?
Sorry.
Bollywood or Hollywood?
I do a mix. So it's not Bollywood or
Okay.
Hollywood. I do a mix.
Okay. Well,
I'm more of this, someone who tries to identify a plot that he likes and research about it and then pick the movie and watch. So I don't typically go on Netflix and just watch whatever comes my way, but I just kind of do my
okay.
work and then get to the movie. So I think I spend a lot of time on books and screens. So that's it. I mean, I don't have a lot of hobbies outside of work, but that's it.
Okay. So are you a workaholic?
Not really. So I don't work too much. I just plan around my weeks or months or days so that I get stuff done. So
Okay.
I think I just focus on making progress more than working too much.
Okay. All right. It was really nice interacting with you, Ramesh. Um, that is it from our side. Thank you for joining News Now Nation. And
Thank you, Ria. Thank you for having me here. I would love to do this some other time. And I wish you all the best for the initiative that you've taken.
thank you so much. Thank you for being here. All right.
Yeah. Thank you,
Bye
Ria.
bye.
Bye.